there is no need to reinvent the wheel. All right? The wheel's been working really well for a long time and is still popular today. And I think that philosophy also applies to real-time strategy games. And I am incredibly glad to see that Frost Giant has not reinvented the wheel. In fact, they've said specifically that their intent was not to try something entirely new, but to take what you already know and make it a little bit better. Yes, the game is in pre-alpha. And yes, that is the state that many AAA studios decide to release their full-price games in today. But Frost Giant has a clear path between now and eventually the game that you're going to try to drag your friends who haven't even thought about RTS for 10 years into, as well as potentially a new generation of RTS players who don't even know what a CD-ROM is. To be clear, this video is not sponsored by Frost Giant, though they were nice enough to send me some of these clips beforehand so I could put together this video for you. But we do have a mutual interest in the success of RTS going forward. And that means instead of being immune to criticism, I think it's most important at this stage. And I'm glad from what I've talked with, Frost Giant also agrees. So we're going to look at another clip real quick, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on the art style of Stormgate. First reactions, first impressions, it's StarCraft units on a Warcraft map. If you're looking for a Blizzard-style RTS, well, you got what you were looking for here. Now, as for the general aesthetic, the kind of cartoony feel, and the fact it is kind of like a Warcraft map, I'm not sure I love it to start. I think it might grow on me, as clearly the units are very visible. The design itself and the ability to pick out units on the field very quickly is already clearly a priority, pun somewhat intended. But as for the more cartoony style, as opposed to StarCraft's more realistic, not realistic, but pseudo-realism in StarCraft 2, it is a bit of a switch. So I'm still kind of torn on it. Though I will say, I've seen some of the designs, concept art, especially for other environments, and you can't help but think of that Warcraft style when you have farms and chickens as opposed to, you know, destructible rocks and space complexes and stuff like that. So I do think as time goes on, we'll see a bit of a grittier aspect to it. But I'm legitimately interested in what people think about this. This is something that's unlikely to change too drastically by release, though there will certainly be changes. So I think opinion right now is going to make a big difference in the direction they decide to go with the game. Enough of that boring art stuff, Jimmy. Let's talk about something important. Gameplay. How does it look? How does it feel? Is it going to be more stressful than your day job just thinking about pressing ranked? Is it similar to past Blizzard RTS, or is it something new entirely? How many resources? How many factions? Have you liked and subscribed? This and more important questions will be answered. By the way, all these clips are from a match between Kevin Monk Dong, one of the lead designers of the game, and TLO. You know, TLO. From Creativity and StarCraft 2 fame, just in case you were wondering. But a quick clip to kind of lay down the basics. All right, first things first. Very start of the game, you're going to see a whole lot of StarCraft and a little bit of Warcraft in there. You see your command center you see your workers, you see 2 sets of resources. The one thing I do want to point out is very similar to Age of Empires, the Scout. It's called the Scout, except it's an acronym. The SCOUT, the robot dogs, in parentheses, I'm reading off the thing, with frickin' laser eyes, have heightened senses that can even identify the presence of enemies concealed by fog of war. And with a warning howl, scouts can activate ocular scanners to temporarily see further through forests that would normally block their vision. So much going on there. But 1, we saw the scouts. 2, the workers, the resources, the basic look of a starting base. So taking that from the Age of Empires 2, where you start with a single scouting horse. But instead a robot dog, but very similar concept, it seems. And I actually want to delve a little bit deeper into each of the units and resources. You've had the appetizer, now it's time for the entree. I'm going to break down what I can share about the human resistance and also the general map design of Stormgate, from the resources to some of the mechanics that are so far relatively unique or at least adapted from other games into Stormgate. So let's dive in. Jumping back to this clip because it shows the very basics of the economy, especially for the humans in Stormgate. The 2 main resources are both gathered by Bobs, which come out of your command post. Bobs, not sure what it stands for, open to ideas, are your worker unit. They come out of the command post right there in the center. A command post which can be upgraded to allow access to higher level units and upgrades, much like a hatchery, it feels like. But the main resource you mine is Luminite, which is currently represented by that gold patch. And then the second resource, which you see currently one of the Bobs making a refinery, a little bit off the screen right now, but is Therium, which is currently represented by those kind of crystal blobs. Now, Therium is a little different than Vespene gas or equivalent resources because it increases over time when unmined. So you can choose to mine it all right now and get all that Therium and pump up your economy, or you can kind of let it build up so that way you have more in the mid-game or whenever you need to build those units. I'm sure the numbers are going to change dramatically over the course of the months, but the idea of a resource that kind of grows over time and potentially is, I don't know, infinite, but doesn't mine out nearly like Vespene gas is super interesting to me, and I think that's a really cool design decision. And also, apparently there'll be different ways to access it, including exposed patches or underground veins, which I imagine will have something like destructible rocks. So let's get into more of the combat units and the early game fighting units of the human resistance. Monk scouting through the trees after he's revealed that attack incoming, gets a beat on 2 Lancers and a bunch of Exos behind. Bob's pulled off the Luminite, slapping together a sentry turret. Mech bays nearly completed on the Vulcans, but nearly completed is not done yet. The Bobs desperately overcharge from the command post, gives them that extra HP, the extra attack speed to maybe buy the time alongside the sentry turret to drive this back until the Vulcans pop out with a vengeance, spinning up the Gatling guns and ripping through the entire army. TLO forced to retreat through the trees, and the Vulcans unable to pursue until they get their jump jet upgrade. I thought I might give you guys a little bit of a taste of what casting might sound like in Stormgate, especially in these early game situations where we see a lot of different mechanics. First off is the Bobs can all build simultaneously, like Age of Empires or Warcraft. I think this opens up a lot of cool strategic ideas. You have the very placeholder looking sentry turret there, so I imagine some sort of bunker-esque, well, I guess just your basic kind of defensive turret. Nothing too complicated there. And then also something to point out, multiple production facilities. So that does seem like a staple mechanic of Blizzard RTS, and we already see here. I don't know how realistic this scenario is, but it is. We're popping out 2 Vulcans from those mech bays, which I have every feeling that it's like a factory sort of situation. So let's break down each of the units. We do have a little blurb here. Thank you to Frost Giant on each of that. But the Lancer unit here, you see the little blades? They studied the blade. All those fancy exos in the back, They got guns, but the Lancers have blades. They're a tanky frontline unit who can upgrade a shield. A hardened shield. The ability to shrug off damaging blows. So that's interesting. Like a hardened shield, like a kind of an immortal sort of ability for the humans. And behind it are the Exos, which have a high-powered rifle. A reliable rifle. I'm sorry. Different. And have the double time ability, which allows them to move faster. And then the next time they attack, they shoot twice. Just the next time. So that's some interesting micro potential, as well as the Vulcans as they pop out here of the mech bay. So the Vulcans have a Gatling gun, which increases the damage over time if it's able to maintain the attack, as well as one, looking like they're straight out of Titanfall, and two, do damage, piercing damage through a line there. So those two Vulcans popping out at the right spot at the right time. I do want to point out as well, even when this is happening, and those are obviously clearly units designed to rip through a lot of small units. One, the small units can go through some of the terrain, whereas the larger units unable to, which opens up interesting map design ideas. Two, the Bobs are able to be overcharged from the command post, which gives them some better combat capabilities. Three, and this was my impression listening to Frost Giant at the community summit, where they gave their general idea of the design philosophy of Stormgate. They want the fights to be slower than StarCraft 2, but not as slow as Warcraft. So there will be no hero units in the sense of Warcraft heroes in 1v1, which is the mode we're seeing here and their main focus to start out. There will be no hero units. But there may be things like upgrading units or buffs or things like that, of course, that you might find. Also, there's things, there are creep camps as well. I don't know how many of them we see in the gameplay videos. But the general idea is to maintain kind of the style of fighting of StarCraft 2 without focusing overly much on one sort of unit. Without a very important thing that they're trying to avoid is not getting bogged down by air deathballs as well. But also giving you the ability to really feel like you're controlling a fight without everything dying, in 1.5 seconds. Not that disruptors or Psystorm or Widowmines or Banelings or Lurkers or Ghosts or Liberate. Or not that there's much of that in StarCraft 2, but I think that's a good direction to go, and I really like the focus on it. Obviously, the details that's where the devil will be. In case of the Infernal Host, maybe literally. But I'm very interested to see what they do with that. So, what other buildings do we have? Jimmy, can we go to the next clip, please? Monk holding the front line, but going to be forced to retreat with a medtech behind. Those units are just too tanky for the Vulcans to deal with. The Atlas up in front, but saved by the evac. A couple sentry turrets gonna help hold the line. The Atlas is repositioned, but from the other side, more medtechs overwhelming the Atlas. Sentry turrets aren't gonna be enough to deal with that much overwhelming resistance. And the medtechs are keeping almost everything in tech. More Vulcans coming out, but GG is called by Monk, and TLO gonna take it. As we see a much more dramatic fight of Monk defending his base here with a few new units. Definitely worth describing. You see a lot more sentry turrets, but some of the advanced upgrades and kind of a split between mech and bio here, much like the Terran of StarCraft 2. But I'm going to go ahead and one unit at a time break it out, or break it down rather, not break it out. First, the Atlas. The Atlas. The long-range artillery rains down area of effect damage. So with the Purification Ordnance, its attacks leave behind a damaging field of flames. And they do cause friendly fire. So in this case, the Atlas is a bit of a combination, like a siege tank reaver sort of unit. It can be dodged as there's a clearly visible area of attack there. You see those, stay out of the fire. And while the flames do seem like they do a lot of damage, they are not burning through those units particularly quickly. Now, the next unit worth pointing out is the MedTech, which you see in the back line there. Kind of a combination like a science vessel sentry. The MedTech is a hefty support unit that can heal and repair allies and enhance nearby forces. I'm not sure what enhance means here, but it kind of combines both repair and healing, apparently, so biomechanical. And with MedTech Adept training, it can unleash a swarm of nanobots that either attacks enemies or heals allies. So, your all-purpose medic sort of unit. Clearly, they're helping out in the back line of this fight and making all the difference against the slower DPS that seems to be prevalent and intentional in Stormgate, and allows these sort of units to have a lot more effect on the battle. And another unit, which there's actually no description for this unit, but I know because it was in the concept art they sent me with a title. It's called the Skyrider. The Skyrider is apparently this flying energy-based unit. Now, I'll let you guess what it does, because I don't actually know or have a description, which is kind of interesting. It seems to do very little damage, but it has an energy bar. My first instinct is some sort of like recon Raven sort of unit, but I'm not actually sure what the Skyrider does. But it clearly is like a spellcaster support unit. So, honestly, some time for speculation here. What do you think the Skyrider is? And another one, like, what is the coolest unit so far? This is, I believe I covered them all. The evac. Oh my god, how could I miss that? The MedTech and the evac, different units. You're going to have to. Not all in one like the Terrans, but the evac unit here, you've seen a lot. Honestly, I think I kind of glossed over it because how obvious what the sort of unit is. But the evac, it can pick up and drop off allied units, including a deployed Atlas, which I'm a little concerned about. So the Atlas sieges up or deploys, and the evac can pick it up and drop it off somewhere else so it can fire again. But I don't think this would have quite the same issues that the Medanks, the siege tank medevacs, did in StarCraft 2, as it clearly is pretty easily dodged and quite fragile. Well, yeah. So the evac is the unit that you're seeing there, just kind of moving things around. The dropship, really, in this case. I guess evac is a more accurate description, but you've kind of got your baseline units here. You've got your long-range siege, you've got your healer support unit, you got your frontline melee, you got your heavy-range DPS in the form of the Vulcan. One more thing to point out right at the beginning of this clip. That's the jump jet upgrade. Going right through the trees, because otherwise those Vulcans will be stranded out there, surrounded and killed. So, and there on the ground you see the mech bays, as well as a habitat. I believe that is in the corner, which is your supply depot. And all it does is increases supply. So, some of the other buildings include the biokinetics lab, which is upgrades for infantry. So finally, it's not engineering bay for infantry, but biokinetics lab. The machine lab, which is research for mechanical and air units, has a conveyor belt, so look out for the... Oh, so that's that building. The sentry turret, the therium refinery, and, of course, the command post are the units we've seen so far. So this is pretty much the extent of what we know about the human resistance. The second faction, the Infernal Host, gonna have to wait. I'm sure there'll be more info coming soon. You have to stay tuned to Frost Giant. Wishlist on Steam. I'm sure you're going to be hearing that a lot. And maybe more factions past that in the future. I don't know. Though they've alluded to it, we don't have any real information yet. But what do you think? Is it something you might be interested in playing? Is it not at all what you expected? What are your concerns? What is your impression? It's very important to me as someone who my entire job is making content for you. And if you have any concerns or feedback at this stage, it's likely I can bring it to Frostgiant, or whoever's tasked with watching all these videos and reading all these comments, productive or otherwise, which I don't envy, sorry Gerald, but you can bring it to them just publicly. They are reading pretty much everything. And I'm sure it's going to be a very busy week at Frost Giant. But I'm going to go into a little more detail about the development process as I can, give a little more context. But this is about the extent of the gameplay info we have so far. But the next segment will have my opinion and maybe a little more detail on what you can expect. And, well, also importantly, when can you play the game? Or at least as much info as I'm able to give you on that. So thank you for watching. If you're going to tune out before the opinion piece, and I hope that you've enjoyed. Wishlist on Steam, and make sure to check out Stormgate either way. So what is the verdict? From someone who's played StarCraft 2 for 13 years, who has made it their full-time job as a streamer, YouTuber, content creator, caster, commentator, influencer, hand model, what have you, for most of that time, almost 10 years now. My feelings remain cautiously optimistic, and more confidently so. Not only, well, before, my cautious optimism was based not just on blind faith, but on the experience of the team at Frost Giant. I know that sounds like the business words, but when you have the game director of StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void, the lead co-op designer, the lead UI designer, the chief engineer of the StarCraft 2 engine, when you have all these things, and we've heard a lot about the responsiveness of the gameplay. They've spent so much time of their development process working on Snowplay, which is their RTS engine within Unreal Engine 5. Essentially the most modern RTS engine. They're claiming, I haven't played it yet, but they're claiming 60 tick response rate, or 60 hertz. Honestly, I'm definitely going to be quoting it wrong. But either way, which is approximately 3 times as responsive as StarCraft 2. With the setup for essentially giving it the most responsive feel of any RTS you've ever played. Now, those are big claims. I'd settle for StarCraft 2.01, to be honest, with active development. But so far, I still very much trust the Frost Giant team. And part of this is I talked about the community summit they held with many, pretty much, if you know someone from RTS, they probably at least know about the summit if they didn't attend themselves. So they had some of the same information, are working from the same base I am. And Frost Giant has a clear development process. I can't tell you the dates. I don't know them. I can't tell you exactly what and when you can potentially play. All I can tell you right now is I will be in the alpha. Yes. Now you can dislike for jealousy. But in the near future, they will be alpha testing with people like myself and also actually good players. Though I think I'd like to represent the less accomplished, less high APM demographic. And then that will expand to a beta process, which your best chance of getting involved is wishlisting on Steam, where they will be pulling in increasing amounts of players in order to test certain aspects of it. I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to show content or stream from that. That'll be up to Frost Giant to decide. But it is not a 2-week... This is not like, oh, and now go buy the premium battle pass for the early access in 2 weeks as we push it out the door. No, there's a long and extensive process. Honestly, I'm impatient. I want it today, but I also want the best RTS game possible. So I have to go, like, over the years, as an old man now, as many of you are, I've learned something resembling patience. So I can wait. I don't want to, but I will, for Stormgate. And honestly, I think there's a ways to go. But I trust that Frost Giant has a comprehensive... I hate saying these words. Oh, it's the worst. But a it's a robust, even. Robust. That's a good one. Robust process for testing the game, getting feedback, especially in the 1v1 mode. But don't... Now, okay. I want to wrap this up because this is the non-edited, just the talking live segment. Though there might be some editing. I don't know what Jimmy's going to do. But to be clear, there are going to be many other modes in the game. There's campaign. 3-player co-op is going to be a main focus. 3-player PvP with objective-based gaming as opposed to just beating the crap out of each other. Maybe you can hide behind your friends. Always important in multiplayer games. But those We don't really have any information on exactly what those will look like, but they are a definite focus of the team. Now, one thing I also want to talk about is the game design in general. I touched on it a little bit during the gameplay, but a main focus of the game is removing those kind of gotcha moments, I call them, in StarCraft 2, where, surprise, Widowmines, Banelings, Disruptors. Yes, they create a lot of, I guess, skill-based moments, but I do think they turned a lot of more casual players off the whole idea of 1v1 in StarCraft 2 over time, as it does feel incredibly unforgiving. And the team is incredibly, and Kevin Dong, one of the lead designers, is very, very cognizant of that and understands that has created a lot of frustration throughout StarCraft 2. Another thing is the stale map design of StarCraft 2. I don't want Daybreak, well, not really Daybreak, but Overgrowth reskinned 14 different times for the map pool. I don't care what the pro players say. As a caster, as a commentator, and as someone who isn't pumping or squeezing the last percentage of efficiency out of my build, I want something a little different. Honestly, I'm a huge fan of Age of Empires kind of pseudo-random map creation. I wouldn't want that, but with the Ethereum resource, it does seem something a little more creative, as well as the addition of creep camps that are not for heroes, at least in the 1v1 mode, but maybe for things like buffing damage against buildings or increasing speed, something like that. Give you something to fight over out on the map, as well as having that early scout unit. So a lot of little details I like that were taken from various other games that honestly do things better than StarCraft 2. So I have a lot of trust in that direction of design. It just comes down to pinpointing what is the most interesting, what is the best to watch and to play. And then, of course, I'm actually very personally excited for like the 3v3 sort of modes, both caster and player in that case. But so far, so good when it comes to Frost Giant. And I'm going to say it again, as that's the number one thing, apparently, is wishlisting on Steam. It costs you literally nothing, just like the game on release. The plan is still very much free to play with absolutely no paying for power in multiplayer. I assume there will be something like co-op commanders or maybe skins that you can get. And everyone knows more skins, more wins, but we'll have to see as the game comes out. But wishlisting on Steam is your best chance to get into the beta process and support the game for literally nothing. So with all that said, yeah, once again, we don't have too much extra detail besides the basic concepts, but I just wanted to reiterate my trust in the team, my general positive outlook on the game. My criticisms are mostly in the art design department, which honestly, as I've been making this video, I've come around to somewhat. Seeing the units actually fight is a little different than kind of a set piece or a screenshot. So I think if it gets a little bit grittier, like this little screenshot behind me, I really like that one. And I definitely could. It's going to grow on me a lot, and maybe I'll really end up loving it. So hopefully you liked this video. Hopefully you liked what you saw so far. And hopefully you'd like to see more. Subscribe. I'm going to give you as much information as I can about Stormgate in the coming months. And, of course, wishlist on Steam once again. This was not paid, except by a mutual interest in seeing the best RTS. And I think Frost Giant has the best chance of bringing us that. So thank you for watching. Good luck, have fun. I hope I made your day a little bit better. Stay chill. Oh yeah, I realized throughout this entire video I was going to cleverly mention it, but I forgot. So we're adding this in at the end. This has all been the soundtrack, the original soundtrack for Stormgate, specifically the humans. So hopefully you enjoy. Here's one last clip of the gameplay. Thank you for watching.